Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is Melissa, and she's never told her story publicly before, correct?
Right. Yeah.
And she's going to tell us about her out of body experience after surgery. So you can go ahead and start wherever you like.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Peggy. Uh, the story starts in 2005 when I had three children from ages ranging 4 to 9. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a blood cancer. I received chemotherapy and radiation. And at that time, I remember making a deal with God in the PET scan machine, saying, God, please, whatever this is, it's fine, but please let me see my last child to the age of 18, and then you can have your way with me, whatever that means. Um, so I was cured from that cancer. The treatments worked. However, at the time, they told me that I would probably have, there's a good chance of having a secondary cancer from the treatment itself because I had a mini mantle radiation treatment to my chest and neck. I developed breast cancer um, during COVID, so in July of 2020. And then that resulted in me having to have a double mastectomy reconstruction, which means all in one surgery, they dissect your chest tissue away, leaving just enough for the skin to live and hopefully there to be some blood supply. And they put some implants in. Not everybody is a candidate for that. Um, I didn't know that. You don't know what you don't know until you know. And I learned a lot during that process. While I was getting out of the shower one day, you come home with these drain tubes, which has tubing and balls that collect the drainage so that you're not collecting on your chest. Um, I hooked one of the drain tubes onto the door handle, pulled the drain tube out. Now it can't function. So my chest started accumulating fluid, which resulted in me having to have another surgery to reconstruct the reconstruction. So I went, it was an outpatient procedure during COVID, you have to go in alone. My daughter drove in to help me with that experience while my husband was at work. And the surgery went fine, came home. She helped me get into my bed, and then she lay down beside me. And do you remember the Viewmasters we had when we were
Yes.
with the discs?
Huh?
Uh, I remember feeling really comfortable, like, oh, my bed feels so good. I laid back, and the minute my eyes closed, the Viewmaster, I'm literally hovering above the earth, facing a mountain range, super close to a mountain range. I knew I was thousands of feet above the earth, like 8,000. It felt like 8,000. I've hiked before and I kind of know what an 8,000 foot elevation looks like. And I just found myself in this situation where I wasn't scared. I was feeling perfect. The temperature of me felt perfect. The temperature in the air felt perfect. I felt like whatever body I had was floating, and maybe the wind was moving it a little bit like a leaf in the wind. I had no fears. I had no concern or even question about what was happening to me because it was so delightful. It was perfect. And then the scene before me, the mountain range was filled with vegetation, all the things that I love, actually, it was filled with flowers of all kinds, waterfalls, ferns, and green foliage. It was just rich in colors that were more vivid than I had ever seen. And I was all of my life, I'm a school counselor. I've been a counselor for 24 years. And we always talk about imagery, uh, visualization. Never in my life was I able to get to a place like this. And so being in the moment, this was the first time in my life that I actually felt present in a moment, literally present. So I was really enjoying all of that. And then it occurred to me, this isn't normal. Yeah. And so I said, gosh, I'm really high up. I hadn't looked down yet, hadn't thought to. And then I decided, I wonder how long this mountain range goes on. It's so phenomenal. And so I look up and I see a clear blue, uniformly blue, powder blue sky with not a cloud in it, nothing. I hear no sounds. There are no sounds in this place whatsoever. The only thing that I can feel is that breeze gently, perfectly rushing across my face and my body. So then I look to the left, and the range goes on as far as my eye can possibly see. But I haven't looked down yet. Hasn't occurred to me. I then suddenly say, wow, I feel like I'm floating. I wonder if I have arms and hands. So I try to pull up my arms and hands, and I have none. But I'm not scared. I'm like, whoa, I wonder if I have feet and legs. So as soon as I look down and notice that there are no legs and feet at all on whatever I am plucked backward at an increasing speed, a rapid pace. It starts out slow. It's like zzz, like that. If I were to put it into a sound, I could feel the force on my body of being pulled backward quickly. And the thought came into my mind, like, no, you aren't supposed to be here yet. No, you can't know about this yet. And so that's kind of like the thought that formed in my mind at that moment, like, oh, I'm not supposed to see this. I'm not supposed to be here. And so I'm zipped back as if someone has a hold of the back of my shirt or the back of my body, and I can feel the force. And I go back through a tunnel. The tunnel is dark, and it's like being pulled through a straw. You know, the mountain range is up close and personal. It's just right in my vision. And then the mountain range retreats smaller and smaller and smaller over a couple of seconds. And then I am rapidly pushed into my body, and I'm pounded into my body, and I sit up because then I gasp because it's such a force that I do this, and I sit up in the bed, and I say to my daughter, who is a physician assistant, I say, "You're never going to believe what just happened to me." And she said, "You're probably right, because I just had surgery." She's really logical and practical, but I know that I was not asleep. And I know that there wasn't even enough time for me to be asleep. It was just like the Viewmaster putting me into that space and then thrown back into my body. It didn't hurt. I didn't feel anything other than a huge rush of adrenaline. I could feel the pressure of the retreat from the scene. And I would say until I decided to look down, I was mesmerized. Until I decided to look down, I had no concern, because it was just such a far out, beautiful experience and perfect. I didn't even think about people I loved. I didn't think about anybody but the moment. So, do you have any questions so far?
I'm just like, it's so cool because little bits of yours and in your thoughts, even, and even looking down to see, is there a body? I'm just like reliving bits and pieces of my different experiences. Like, oh my gosh, it was just like that. And so I'm just like, huh?
Yeah, it was just magical. And of course, my daughter told me afterward, it's probably the ketamine in your anesthesia that created that experience for you. And so that got me, I don't believe that. I started investigating ketamine versus psilocybin. So ketamine does something different. It's a psychedelic, just like psilocybin, the magic mushroom.
Oh,
Psilocybin is a psychedelic, but they function in two different ways. So I'm not opposed to thinking that the ketamine helped create that out of body experience for me, but I am opposed to saying the medication created the experience. The medication created the opportunity, I think. Psilocybin, the magic mushroom type of psychedelic, puts your brain chemistry or neurons or whatever into overdrive. Still, ketamine, that is an anesthesia, relaxes. So they work on your brain in two different ways from the research that I did with some scholarly articles. And if ketamine relaxes your brain chemistry, that then allows possibly our soul to disconnect from the physical body. This is what I'm thinking, based on what I've read. And when I think about your experience that you've shared on here, if I may
sure.
reference your sexual assault, that I'm very sorry that happened to you, but you claim you were spared from the physical sensation of that. And as I have done my work as a counselor and researched this, it's so incredibly common for sexual assault victims, physical abuse victims to dissociate. And we call dissociation a disorder,
Right.
which
It's a gift.
it's a
It's a
God's,
miracle.
it's a God-given gift
It's a
to,
rescue.
yes, yeah. And for us to continue at this point, and I'm very excited about what the internet has done for, are we doing okay?
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I'm just fixing the lights in my face. Go ahead.
That's okay. I'm very excited for the web, the internet, to connect all the folks like you and the people you have on your program, to legitimize this this difference between our soul and our body, the difference between our brain and our soul, our essence, our consciousness.
Yeah. And, as far as, you trying to understand, which you understand that's logical, what caused this? You need to look at medication first. And if I had to give my personal opinion, because I don't know, and you don't, I would say no, because you were home, you weren't hallucinating all the way home from the hospital.
Yeah. No.
Why then? Why did it? It wasn't like you just ingested it and then did this. I would think if it was
Right.
going to be a medication thing, it would be that. But maybe you just were a little more relaxed. Maybe you were under a lot of stress because, and you had just relaxed because this was over. I don't know. Because, we're going to ask ourselves those questions. Why did this happen?
Yeah. And find a reason. I definitely was not upset. I've never been upset on my cancer journeys because I've been very fortunate to have always found things early and be able to be cured, or it's been able to be resolved. So I'm the kind of person, unless someone tells me I'm dying, I'm not going to plan on dying. I'm just going to have to do what I have to do to get better and get back to my normal. So I don't believe I was upset or worried. I literally felt no different than I felt before I went into the surgery because I knew it was going
It
to be
just
okay.
happened.
Yeah. So as we're talking about dissociation in psychology, in the psychology world and the mental health world, we've got to move away from that platform of believing that it's a disorder in order to embrace what you know and what I know, which is that there's a lot more, now that we're all getting connected globally, um, to this body spirit connection disconnection, that it's not a disorder.
What I've come to believe is because I've had so many experiences, I died, drowning at
Yeah.
5 and then at 25, and at the time of the rape, it was before the 25 because I was only 16. So I'd only had the drowning. And so that's the only time I had left my body. But of course, I didn't sit there and decipher then all these connecting the dots. I was like, what was that? Because I was praying, praying, praying. I wasn't even on this earth
Mm.
because I knew he's getting ready to approach me. And
Yeah.
I knew because he was black and we lived in a very prejudiced family and community that this was going to be my fault because I wasn't able to fight him. So in
Yeah.
my mind, I was letting this happen because he'd already threatened to throw me in a pond, a
Yeah.
lake. He'd already threatened to throw me in the lake. And then he took me to the shed and broke off this lock, and so I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, and there's all these tools on the walls of the shed, and I thought, would he use that? Would he use that? How would he? If I resist, what? How will he kill me?
Yeah.
And all he wanted to seem like was a date when all he was supposed to do is take me to my dad. So all this turmoil in me. There's no way out of this, and I knew that the only way out of this was to just let him think he has his date so he don't kill me. But in
Right.
my mind, I'm letting this happen, so I'm agreeing to it. I didn't understand, what I do today about, say date rape or whatever. And that some girls, when you're kidnapped and raped, that you have to go along so they don't kill you. I didn't understand that I would have that defense,
Right.
because I was just 16. I wasn't really intelligent either, 16-year-old. I was immature. And plus, months prior, I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but months prior, um, I was walking along a road with this guy from a party, and his older brother jumped out of the bushes and started to rape me, and then had that guy hold me down. He first said, "Stop, don't do that," and then he started helping him. And I had screamed and fought and fought and fought, and then I seen somebody come out of the porch, out of the party, and I got enough breath to scream again, and he came in and he stopped it. So I was a fighter. I'm
Yeah.
not a lay down and take it girl. I'm a fighter.
Yeah.
And it just killed me to not be able to fight. And so that's why I was praying. Wish I wouldn't even on this earth because nobody loves me, not my family. Now they're really going to hate me. And then I am out in the black sky among the twinkling stars. And I was way up because I'm looking down at Earth like a globe, like you see, in your science class. It was like that size. And it was
Wow.
just, and I thought, wow, Earth Earth is just a spirit like I am because it's just floating. Imagine how much it weighs, and it's a floating there, suspended in space, just like I am. And I felt
Yeah.
like Earth was a ghost or something. Like I was like its ghost, and so is Earth because we're just like suspended in space, floating. And
Yeah.
and I felt like you, like all the warm breeze,
Oh.
and but I
Perfect.
looked down and I had my body. I had my shirt and my jeans on and my
Wow.
skinny little teenage body, and it was just I was safe. Everything was okay. And then when I started thinking, okay, I knew my body was down below being raped. Couldn't see it, couldn't feel. I just knew because that's what was about to happen before I left. So I knew that. I just instantly knew that was still going on. And I felt rescued. And then I thought, wait a minute, I can't stay here. I'm 16. I got a life to live. So I guess I need to go back. And once I had that thought, I was back and it was over. And I had experienced nothing from the time he walked over and approached me and said, "I hope you don't think I'm sleeping on the floor," because I was sleeping on a little tiny cot,
Yeah.
trying to sleep, had my face against the wall, thinking he'll just leave me alone. And I knew what was going to happen. And then when I come back, he said he was done, and he said, "Wow, I want a wife like you someday," meaning easy, because I apparently laid there and took it. I mean, because I had to been like a dead body.
Yeah.
And he took that as easy. That's the
Perfect.
kind of wife he wants someday. And but then I'm stuck with like you when you come back. What was that? How
Yeah.
does this happen? I
Yeah.
mean, you're as an adult, you can get on the internet and just last year, and I'm
Yeah.
16, like I never heard of such a thing. These things don't happen. And I thought, did God just answer my prayer? Was this a gift? I
Right.
prayed I wasn't even on this earth. And
Right.
then, and
You asked,
so
you
what was
literally
it? I
asked,
don't know.
you
Yeah.
asked for help. And I have read and have heard so many stories of people asking, and you ask,
Yeah.
you receive.
Yeah.
I worked with someone about 20 years ago. I'll never forget this case because I kept her letter. She couldn't explain to me exactly what was happening to her, which was dissociation, or now I know it's an out of body experience. Her stepfather was molesting and raping her, and she had two little sisters. She knew that he was going to start doing that to them. They got a little older, and he started to make moves in that direction. And so she would offer herself up and beg him, please don't bother them. They're sleeping. She would sleep with them to protect them. And then she would let him have his way every time to save her little sisters. And she would come into I was a high school counselor at that time. She would come into my office and feel like she was not well mentally because she would leave her body. She thought she had special powers. She could do this at will.
I wondered that
And
too.
she
Do I
tried,
have the skill?
yeah, yeah. And so at that time, I knew nothing about out of body experiences. I knew a little bit about astro travel because my dad had some books around the house that he was always a seeker also of knowledge and connection. And, but I hadn't read the books. She wrote it down, and I kept that letter for about 15 years, where she was trying to explain her power of being able to leave the body. And I returned that letter to her when I had her children as in a school, in our school. I'm trying not to do any identifying information here, but um, and I now know what that was. And after reading and listening to you and hearing so many stories, I feel like I might be on a little bit of a mission somehow, I'm not sure how, to get dissociation away from the stigma of being disordered and into an actual uh, survival gift,
That would
a
be
cure.
awesome. That would be awesome.
I don't know
Because
how.
how many kids would get diagnosed and put on medication if they told their counselor that?
100% that they actually, the community, medical community thinks there's a break with reality. But how did you get your vantage point? How did you get to be in space? How did you get to hover above your body when you were miscarrying or when you had your pregnancy that you lost? How would you have those
And
details?
and I've asked myself those questions even before I started talking out loud about my experiences, inners, how this, how that, how I don't understand. And so I just leave it alone. But today, I will tell you what I believe about out of body experiences, yours, mine, that girl's, NDEs. I believe those are glimpses into God's personality.
Yeah.
That is God rescuing us. Why you had that, we don't know. God gave you that. And I think people mistakenly think these are gifts and these are skills, and they can teach you how to do these things and leave your body or take this mushroom or this whatever DMT and stuff, and you can have a similar. No, 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 no. I firmly, personally believe, out of listening to all kinds of experiences, having
Uh,
my own experiences, that these are glimpses into God's personality. And, when I drown at 5, I didn't go into a heavenly realm and everything. I was this ghost kid. But I was like you. I looked down and where's my arms and legs and stuff? There's nothing there. And when I
yeah.
died at 25 to a pregnancy, I looked down too. There was nothing there. But that out of body experience, I had a body, but you didn't. And so people want to make these things into new age, to prove against Christianity that we are God and we are. No, 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 no. This is God's personality. Every one of these experiences, we can view God's personalities, and they happen when atheists have NDEs, And
Oh yeah.
sometimes atheists, or maybe not even atheists, are more like, would call themselves like New Age and believe in more in spirituality and they are God, whatever. If you just listen to their experience
Mhm.
and judge it from your own heart, because sometimes they judge it from there, just like I'm judging mine from my heart and what I believe.
Right.
It's like that's God's personality. Um,
You know,
because
I
like at 16, I'm thinking, is this a skill? Is this a prayer answered, or do I have a skill? Because before this, when my stepdad would beat me up, I would go, okay, I would find this place in my mind that I would say, okay, big man, inside myself, go ahead, beat on a little girl. You think you're a big man. I don't feel anything. That was my way of not feeling it. Because when you're a teenager and your mom's husband is beating you on the floor like you're a little child, you got pride. I mean, I did. I was very
yeah.
proud. Like, don't embarrass me. Don't, humiliate me in public. Like he tried spanking my butt in public one time, and all the way home, and all my friends and these people that I just met were watching. And someone spanked my butt I was 15, and so I got this pride where you can't hurt me. And I'm changing schools all the time. Nothing hurts me.
Mhm.
I would lie to myself, try to convince myself, because that could make me, because I was tired of being suicidal and sitting there with a razor blade in the bathtub about ready to do it. I knew I had
Oh
to
yeah.
get tougher. You
Yeah.
can't be weak in certain, when you have a hard life, you got to get strong. You got to get tough.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then like I went from being a counselor and social worker, working on the pipeline, and I learned again, you got to get tough.
Mm.
You got to carry this stuff. You can't worry about what them guys think. You're not high heels and the nice little cute outfit. You're in a hard hat and you're in men's clothes and boots, and
Yeah.
you better adjust.
Yeah, if you're soft, you're going to crumble. You want to hold yourself together. I mean, it's a natural inclination to want to withstand and hold together when someone's trying to crumble you. At some point, well, you're either going to fold or you're going to stand. Even if it's just mentally.
And
Um,
I just thank God that he rescued me out of that. I mean, I did. You're right. I asked, I wish I would on this earth. And I was praying before that, and thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to get out of this? And I thought, I'm not going to be able to fight. And that just killed me that I wasn't going to be able to fight. And then up in the air and in the sky. But see, that's not hallucination.
no,
I
no,
was in the sky
no.
because I could not imagine. I could not hallucinate. Like I told my husband when I first started talking about it, I said, "Okay, I don't get this. There was a light shining on Earth. Where was that?" And he had explained to me how the Earth shines, because I'm in the dark night sky and among the stars. Why wasn't it so dark I couldn't see the Earth? How come it was shining? It was like glowing. And he explained to me, because I didn't understand science or anything, as a kid. And he
Wow.
explained how actually it does.
So you didn't know what you didn't know. The
Mm-mm.
only way to know is to finally experience or
Yeah,
come
I
to know.
was actually there, like an
Right.
astronaut looking down. You mean I
Because
experienced that?
because you didn't have a reference point. So you could not have made that up. There's no
Couldn't
way
have
when
made that up.
when children tell me something that they can't possibly know, I believe them. Because I mean, literally, children have been on the earth a number of days. If you're a 2-year old, you've only been on the earth less than 1,000 days. And if a 2-year old says something like there's a man behind you or I talk to God, how would they know that?
And I
Especially,
would, and I love what you're talking about, how you're trying to make that where it's not a mental illness, where we have these dissociation, I can't say it.
it's a hard
Because
word.
when the next day, when I got away from this guy and I was in the back seat of a police car, and they were
Mm.
going to put me back with my parents, and my stepdad told them point blank, I will kill her when I get her home. She is my
Wow.
daughter, is my stepdad. She's my daughter, is my right. And my mom got on top of the cop car and said, Peg, open the door. In your back of a cop car, anytime in my life I've been in back of a cop car, and you can't open them. You can't open those doors. They lock, And I say, Mom, I can't. And she starts beating on the glass. and she's on top of it, beating on the trunk. She's climbing up on the trunk and on the cop car and beating on the hood, trying to get me out. That's how crazy my mother was, and that's how crazy my stepdad was. So they put me in protective custody. They took off, and I'm in the back seat, and I'm thinking, what's going on? And they said, man, that guy's crazy. Said we thought he was. He says, man, sir, you don't mean that. He's, oh yes, I do. He said he was serious. He was going to kill you as soon as he got you home. And I'm thinking, welcome to my world.
And thank you for noticing. Thank you for noticing that he's crazy. Wow.
I mean,
and actually, providing safety for you in that moment. So many times in my work as a school counselor, I've had to think, how am I going to use my life? You're using your life this way, which is such a beautiful, beautiful use of your life. I said that in my email to you, and I mean that today. It's, if you do nothing else with your life, this is everything.
and what I was going to say is, so when the cops are questioning me later about what happened and everything,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell him I left my body, and I would love it if counselors, CPS, because I didn't even think about when a CPS.
I ask all the people that I
Did you leave your body? Anything spiritual strange
have
happened?
you
That's
ever
awesome.
felt like you left your body? Have you
Because
ever?
all I said was I didn't fight it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
but I told him, he was just supposed to take me to my dad's, and he wouldn't do it. He took me to this bar. I said, look at me. I'm 16. I look 12. And I said, I can't go in that bar and drink with you. Take me to my dad's. No, no, no. And then all these things that happened, that I kept saying how I pleaded and pleaded and pleaded. And then he took me there. Well, did you resist him having sex with you? No. So what's that mean to him, to the police, to children's services, to the courts? He got charged with statutory rape.
It sounds
And
like
my whole family to this day
wow,
believe I willingly had sex with that man. And my family beat me to a pulp, and my first husband's family beat me up because I was an inward lover.
I am so sorry.
And
That is
I have
so
nothing. If I
horrific.
would have fell in love with that man, I would have no trouble marrying a black man. You
Yeah.
know,
Love
not
is
I'm not
love.
prejudiced, right? But I didn't want to be with this person. I was in love with my fiance. My parents made us break up. And long story short, and I'll send you my book. You'll find out that the reason he did this, he didn't like my fiance. He did this to get back at my
Power. It was
fiance.
a power play.
Yeah, I didn't
Which is
know that till or like a year later.
that's unbelievable.
That's why
Wow.
he did that.
Wow.
They set me up. They knew I was being abused. They saw the bruises and they said, oh, he'll take you to your dad's. No. But the thing is he was going to throw me in that lake, and I knew him and his cousin. The only ones knew I was there. I knew she'd never tell. I've been missing. I've been one of those missing kids. Just went for a walk one night at 5 o'clock and never seen again.
Look how you calculated your survival. You say you weren't that bright. You say you were normally a fighter, but you did fight through that situation. You used all of your resources in that moment, your intuition. You took inventory of all of the items around you, and you planned out the best course of action for your survival. And then you asked for help. Like, you couldn't have done any more, and the help came.
Yeah, and I was able to get away from him the next day by continuing, because we slept on the stupid little cot the next morning, and I continued, make him think you're his girlfriend. He'll trust you to let you go to a phone. And so he took me. I kept saying, I need to go to a phone. I need to call my dad, and to come get me. And so he took me to, I don't know if it's his mom or his grandma, this woman's house. And as soon as he walked in with me, she looked at him and she said, you need to take that little girl back home. Her parents are looking for her. Wow. She knew right off the bat I was not willingly with this guy, because I was already prepared. I'm going to have to keep this up. I don't know who this person is. This is my boyfriend. I don't know, but no, she knew right off the bat. You need to take that little girl home. And so he took me to a phone and picked up some friends on the one that set this up for me to. He was going to take me to my dad's, and so I got to a phone. I called my dad, and he says, I'm not allowed to come get you. He says you have to call police. So I called the police, come get me. So anyway, but
Peggy, there's a situation. I know you're in Ohio, right?
mm-hmm.
I do want to ask you what's going on in Ohio and see if there's any insight you can offer with your DCS work. But do you want to finish
No, go
what you're
ahead. Go ahead. Because I get off, like I had PTSD and like
saying.
I can
Yeah.
get off on stuff and like I need help getting pulled out sometimes.
Yeah. Um, by the way, ketamine is being used for the treatment of PTSD virtually. I don't know if you've heard of any companies doing that, but I just started researching that because when you get really hard cases of PTSD, depression, anxiety, and typical medications don't work, they are with a guide, with a trained guide and medical team. John Hopkins University actually is doing psilocybin research right now for the treatment. But topic switch. You're in Ohio. I'm in Indiana. In Indiana, we used to have a, a law that if families withdrew their children for homeschooling or didn't enroll them in formal education, they had to sign up with the Indiana Department of Education for a homeschooling number. So at least somebody knew that the child existed and that they were getting an
Uh-huh.
education. But they never really had to prove that they were getting educated, just that they were connected and considered homeschool.
Uh-huh.
In the last 2 years, that has changed. Parents no longer have to get a homeschooling number and connect them to the Department of Education. They can just simply not enroll them in school or not educate them. So here's the DCS part. Whenever I have to make a DCS call, which has ramped up, I've 2 years ago, I think I made 3 years ago, I made 42 calls in one school, which doesn't sound like a lot, but those are the things I knew about. That's just what I knew about. This started happening. If I call DCS and it was a case where, the parent was scared because something bad was happening or they weren't taking care of the problem, they have now just started withdrawing their children from school, formal education, and keeping them at home. Never to be heard from again, never to be seen again. I don't know if they're alive. I don't know if they're being trafficked. I don't know if they're being beaten every day. I don't know what's happening to these children who are now, not all of them, do I have that concern about, but how do we know if there's no checks and
No.
balance system? When I think about your life or the lives of the kids that I do know about, or the people I grew up with that shared their abusive childhoods with me, if they didn't go to school, they would have had nothing. They would have had nothing. They would have been killed, hurt,
I
even
would have had
more,
nothing to eat.
or
Like
have
school
nothing.
lunch was it.
Yes, like breakfast and lunch at school. Our kids cry when they leave school. They love school so much, our students, not all of them, but it's a safe place. I don't know if Ohio is doing that. Is this happening across the country where there's no check and balance anymore?
I don't know. I left working at CPS years ago. So
Yeah.
I don't know with the new rules what's going on. But even when I worked in CPS in the 90s, if we got a case and we got a call, usually my supervisor got the call, the family's hired an attorney and you're not allowed to go there. You're not allowed to interview the kids. That would be
Yeah.
it.
I
The
didn't know.
prosecutors wouldn't help us.
And the parents still today have the right to decline a forensic interview. What? Who's protecting children? The lady in charge of DCS in Indiana, um, she resigned a couple years ago. We got this person who stepped up, but she resigned shortly after. She said, I don't have the resources to help the children in this state to the level that they need help. So she had to step down because she couldn't do the job that she knew needed to be done. And now it's worse without kids having to check in to some sort of educational process. We're in trouble.
In parents' defense, CPS went overboard on removals and
Not, not now.
really, but
There's
now it's like a pendulum swing. It's went back the other way now.
yeah.
It's their hands off because
Well,
I've
there's
had to make calls on things in the
yeah,
past few years, and she
yeah.
says, "Oh, we're all hands off now."
Well, the problem is there aren't resources for them to utilize. You know, they might substantiate, but there aren't enough resources. And then I think this is the hill I'm willing to die on. This hill I'm willing to die on, to get some institution to know that a child exists beyond birth, and to know that they're getting the education that they are deserving of in this country. Just to say they're getting educated is not enough,
Yeah.
because I'm really thinking about the abuses that can happen once you keep a child. And I want to say this, I know many excellent homeschooling families. I absolutely, it's not a homeschooling problem.
Yeah,
It's
I
a,
homeschooled mine adopted and a neighbor kid
that's
before.
amazing, but that's different than child abuse.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I would just
I know
say,
what you're saying because I've seen in the news it's the rise in child abuse since kids were home because of COVID.
yeah, too many cases that I personally even know about. And we've talked about this as school counselors and school social workers, but I don't know how to write. I don't know how
With
to
the
write.
parents on drugs, it
Um,
just scares me.
if I had to, guess that, and the woman who stepped down as the director of DCS in Indiana, it was about the opiate crisis. It's just far too vast and wide and huge for the resources that we have to give to it. But then here's the next step. We have parents who cannot parent their children, so grandparents are are guardians,
Mhm.
and even I have great grandparents raising great grandchildren. So that layer of parenting that is not able to do the parenting, that's the next level of care coming, because
Yeah,
when great grandparents and grandparents pass on, who is the backup? Who will be the backup?
yeah. And I'm I'm pro life all the way, but I think we need to start preparing now for a
Yeah,
lot of unwanted children because great grandparents are going to be
gone.
called upon. I mean,
Yeah, they'll be past. Well, they'll be past. They won't even. Well, great grandparents will exist, but the problem is the cog in the wheel. That layer that are going to be grandparents are doing drugs right now,
I know, I
so they're not
know.
going to be
My
capable.
age group, it disgusts me.
Not going to be capable of stepping in
They're
when
still
they're.
teenagers. They think they are.
Yeah, it's like an arrested development, an emotional arrest. I don't know. So that's one direction I'm going in, and
Because we're going to have parents that don't want to be parents,
yeah,
grandparents that never want to be parents anyway, let alone being grandparents. And I think the burden is going to go on great grandparents that grew up in a society that stepped up to your responsibilities, took care of your own, because
yeah.
we don't have those ethics in a lot of generations now.
And then you think about all of the children in foster care that don't have placement right now.
Yeah.
But the placement problem is large, from what
Yeah.
I understand, for
And you
people in.
start bringing in newborns, nobody's going to be adopting those children anymore.
So
Because
what are
older
we gonna?
kids, they're saying they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. So that it has me thinking of, everybody in DCS says, um, what's it called? I'm missing the word when children are raised in an institution together. Orphanages.
Mhm.
Catholic orphanages. I was raised Catholic, and then I'm not practicing, and now I'm just spiritual and a believer in God of all things. But I know that the orphanages, were not as good, according to the research, as a foster home, because of the imprinting in the
And then
relationship.
you've got abuse there.
And you got abuse there. And so I don't know what the backup plan is. No one's talking about the backup plan. And I'm kind of freaking out. Like, why isn't anyone talking about a
But
plan?
there is good that's coming from all these things, though. Like um, I know my kids, they work for the federal government. They work from home now. And I think it's going to be permanent.
True.
And so their kids are home.
Yeah,
They're
that's
home.
good.
No more daycares, no more,
Yeah,
all the shuffle and everything and the
true.
travel. It's worked out for them great. And a lot of people, it has worked out great. But then there's a lot that hasn't.
Yeah, that's a
And,
really
and
good.
like the abortion, there's hopefully there'll be millions of children now that won't be aborted, that will be born, but we're going to need homes for these kids. If the
Right,
mom says, "Hey, you made me have it, but you can't make me raise it," I mean, I'll
right.
be first in line to be adopting up
Yeah,
these
I
babies.
think I think you've done your fair share.
Oh, I'll be. Oh no, I'll be first in line again because we adopted older kids because babies weren't available.
right.
And I have kids that have adopted babies right out of the hospital, safe haven babies and things. And that's great. But we got older kids, and because did therapeutic foster care, they knew I could take the hardest. So the way they gave me the hardest, right?
Yeah.
And like
Oh
take these
my
sibling
goodness.
groups and stuff. And so yeah, I'm ready to. I'll be bringing home babies. Yeah.
I love babies. It's so amazing that you've done that. Thank you for doing that for
Oh,
human.
it was wonderful. I mean, I remember I felt like Snow White in the Nine Drawers there for a while because these
Yeah.
little kids just loved me. Well, then they got to be teenagers and all their problems from their
Manifest.
past, their parents, and then they're in contact behind my back with their biological, who's telling them to lie about us, thinking that that'll get them to go back home, and it
Yeah.
created a huge nightmare because when I worked at Children's Services, I reported my agency and the sheriff's department and the prosecutor's office for corruption, for things against children, for
Yeah.
not doing their jobs and protecting. I mean, I was a pain in their side. I didn't mean to be, but it got to a point I couldn't help but. And so when my kids start lying, what do you think happens?
They turn on you.
Oh yeah,
Oh
yeah.
wow.
Oh
Wow.
yeah.
You would
Oh
s-
what, honey? What? You say that you're thinking about running away because you can't see your boyfriend? Oh, we're putting her not only just in custody, she's going protective custody and going to be adopted to somebody else. Oh yeah, corrupt out the wazoo.
unreal.
3 times our
Try-
girls decided they wanted to see this drug addict boyfriend or sexually active with this boy, and they get grounded and they know what their other sisters did to get their way. So let's see, one of them said we made her drink bleach. I said, honey, if you drank bleach you'd be dead.
Actually, not. I had to call Poison Control Center because my daughter drank bleach when she was a toddler. And I said, am I going to get DCS called on me? And they said, you don't have to do anything. Just give her lots of liquids. She's got clean pipes now. Don't worry. Because
Really?
yeah, it was just a swallow full. I wanted to talk to you real quick about Shayna Swan. Have you heard of Dr. Shayna Swan? There is a Joe Rogan podcast with Dr. Shayna Swan that I think would be of interest to you. It's not an NDE thing, but it's her research for the last 20 years has placed humans on the endangered species list because the sperm count is going down by 1% every year now, according to her research. And what she claims is, which is going to be a huge problem with population.
Why is that happening?
So she studies the distance between a male's anus and his scrotum. Sorry. I'm
I
trying to
guess we
use
talk about everything on here, don't we?
anatomically
We call
correct.
that taint. It taint one and it taint the other.
So that's what she calls it too, because she knew Joe Rogan would understand that.
Really? She knew
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, she did.
Usually it's said about a female, not a male, but
Well, true. Well, the male has one too. And
okay.
I and what you'll learn is that she studies and that distance has to do with the distance that I think sperm travels and is viable.
Oh,
And the shorter that distance gets, which is what's happening, and we're getting. She thinks it's due to the plastics. That's what her research shows. It's changing our anatomy, and changing our anatomy. The
but
sperm count
why is it
lower
happening?
because of plastics in our
Plastics.
environment.
Huh.
And she cites this other gentleman who has been researching frogs and plastics on their anatomy development and all the anomalies that are happening to a frog's anatomy. So
Like plastics in our water even maybe, huh? Drinking water.
that's exactly what what we're
Okay.
talking about here. So I just thought, for your own interest, because you seem to be built the way I'm built, it's all kind of interesting. But Shayna
So,
Swan has been
ladies, you're
serious.
measuring the wrong area.
Yeah. Well, for a man to say women aren't fertile, it's now a male problem.
Huh.
So just interesting, just interesting. So we may not be having all these babies because
But
turns out
1%, I mean, a year, I mean, yeah, after a while, that'd be like in 100 years, be extinct, right?
that's why she's speaking out. She said, I don't normally do shows like Joe Rogan. I'm a science girl. And she's got her PhD, and she's like, but you have more followers in this world right now than anybody. And I need people to understand that we're in a very bad situation here with reproduction.
And you imagine if there's less and less babies being born, nobody's going to be having abortions because it's going to be a rare thing.
It's all very interesting. I don't know what the future holds, but these scientists are all finding things that are super interesting to the human experience.
Maybe there'd be a lot more IVF. The
There
ones
are
that
there
has
is.
is more fertile. I mean, you take billions of sperm, from one man and populate the whole state.
Real quick, have you seen on Netflix Our Father? It's a show called Our Father.
Uh-uh.
One of our family friends' son-in-laws is one of 93 children that in
Yes, I did
Indianapolis.
see that.
Yeah. So the Matt, the guy on the show,
Yeah.
is a friend of a friend. Um, but that doctor
And
was
what was so wrong about that, I think, is that even if the husband brought his sperm in, the doctor used his instead.
so insidiously disgusting and vile. That is rape. But he didn't break any laws because no laws existed. It's just bizarre. Bizarre world. Well, anyway, thank you so much for letting me share my
We get
out
off
of
topic
but
from the
that's
show.
okay. That's how I like to go. Because there's
I
just
say let spirit guide us where it wants us to go, and in this show, it guided us to go to Taint.